So there I was, Corporal Jake Morrison, living my best life on the scenic vacation destination known as Zirion 7. And by scenic, I mean it looks like someone took Mars and decided it needed more rocks and fewer redeeming qualities. The tourism board really missed the mark when they named this place. Should have gone with something more accurate, like Planet Please Kill Me Now or Rock City Population Nobody Cares. I was doing what I do best on this godforsaken chunk of space debris, which is absolutely nothing productive while pretending to be on patrol. The brass back on Earth thinks we're out here protecting vital mining operations from hostile alien forces. In reality, I'm babysitting a bunch of automated mining bots that could probably run themselves if anyone bothered to read the manual. But hey, at least the pay is decent, and the chances of actual combat are somewhere between slim and non-existent. That was before I opened my backpack. Picture this. You're expecting to find your usual collection of military-issued disappointments. Stale protein bars that taste like cardboard mixed with sadness. Water purification tablets that make everything taste like swimming pool chemicals. Maybe a few personal items that remind you why you joined the military in the first place, back when you thought it would be exciting instead of mind-numbingly boring. What you don't expect to find is a small furry creature that looks like someone crossed a house cat with a disco ball and then hit it with a rainbow. This thing had shimmering fur that was cycling through colors like a broken Christmas light display. Purple to blue to green to colors that probably don't have names because human eyes weren't meant to process them. And it was purring. Actually purring, like this was the most comfortable spot in the entire galaxy. What the hell are you? I asked, because talking to mysterious alien creatures is apparently what I do now. The thing opened its eyes, and I swear they looked like tiny galaxies spinning in its skull. Two perfect spirals of stars and cosmic dust, which would have been beautiful if I wasn't currently having a minor existential crisis about finding alien life in my lunch compartment. It made a sound, not quite a meow, more like someone trying to tune a radio and accidentally picking up whale songs from another dimension. Then it stretched, like cats do, except this one's stretch involved briefly becoming translucent and flickering like a hologram with bad reception. Okay, that's not normal, I muttered, because understatement is apparently my superpower. I reached for it, figuring I'd just scoop it out and deposit it somewhere that wasn't my personal storage space. The moment my hand got close, it made the most pathetic sound I've ever heard. Imagine a kitten that just found out Santa isn't real, got dumped by its girlfriend, and lost its job all on the same day. That's what this thing sounded like. My hand froze. Which was stupid, because I'm a trained soldier and this is clearly some kind of alien organism that could be dangerous. But those sounds, those horrible heart-wrenching sounds that seemed designed by evolution specifically to make humans feel guilty about everything they've ever done wrong in their lives. Don't give me that look, I told it. You can't just move into someone's backpack without permission. There are rules about this sort of thing, regulations. Probably several forms that need to be filled out in triplicate. It tilted its head, and I swear it looked confused. Like it was genuinely trying to understand why anyone would have a problem with unauthorized backpack habitation. Then it did something that pretty much sealed my fate. It curled up into a perfect little ball, tucked its head under what I assumed was a tail, and continued purring. The sound was actually kind of soothing, like a tiny engine of contentment that had somehow found its way into my otherwise miserable existence. And that's how I, Corporal Jake Morrison, defender of humanity and professional complainer, became the unwilling roommate of what appeared to be an alien cat that had apparently decided my backpack was prime real estate. This was definitely not covered in basic training. Now, any reasonable person would probably report this situation immediately, contact the science team, fill out the proper paperwork, maybe even call it in as a potential first contact scenario. But here's the thing about military protocol, it's designed by people who have never actually encountered the situations they're writing protocols for. So instead of doing the smart thing, I decided to try reasoning with my new roommate first, because clearly logical discussion is the best approach when dealing with interdimensional disco cats. Look, I said, pulling out one of my protein bars. I don't know what you eat, but this is all I've got. It tastes like disappointment flavored with artificial chicken, but it's nutritionally complete according to the label. The creature's eyes went wide, and suddenly it was the most alert thing I'd ever seen. It practically launched itself at the protein bar, making happy chittering sounds that were actually kind of adorable. Watching it eat was like watching someone discover chocolate for the first time, pure, undiluted joy over what was essentially military-grade cardboard. Great, I muttered. I'm enabling alien wildlife now. That's when Lieutenant Rita Valdez decided to make her grand entrance. Rita is what happens when you take military efficiency, add a splash of righteous fury, and then multiply it by someone who actually read all the regulations. She's good people, but she follows rules the way some people follow religion. Morrison, she barked, storming over to my position. What's your status report? And why do I hear you talking to yourself out here? The creature, who had been happily demolishing my protein bar, suddenly went stock still. Its fur shifted from the rainbow light show to a perfect mimicry of the surrounding rocks. If I hadn't been staring right at it, I would have completely lost track of where it was. Just, a radio check, Lieutenant, I said, which was technically true if you considered talking to alien life forms a form of communication technology. Rita narrowed her eyes. She has this way of looking at you that makes you feel like she can see through your soul and find all the times you've lied about flossing your teeth. Morrison, you're acting weird, weirder than usual, and that's saying something. Before I could come up with a believable excuse, the creature apparently decided that camouflage was for quitters. Its fur shifted back to full disco mode, and it made that radio tuning whale song noise again, except louder, much louder. Rita's expression went through several interesting phases: confusion, surprise, disbelief, and then straight into panic mode. Morrison, what in the holy hell is that thing? Would you believe me if I said it's a new type of military equipment? No. Okay. It's an alien. And before you start yelling, it's friendly. Look, it likes our food. As if on cue, the creature finished the protein bar, and started making those pathetic mewing sounds again, clearly hoping for seconds. Rita stared at it, then at me, then back at it. Morrison, this is a first contact situation. Do you understand what that means? There are protocols, procedures, forms that need to be filed yesterday. I know, but we need Dr. Kronk. Now. Dr. Felix Kronk is what happens when you give someone with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever multiple advanced degrees in xenobiology. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but he has the social awareness of a caffeinated squirrel. Within 10 minutes of Rita's call, he came running across the compound like he'd just won the scientific lottery. Is it true? He gasped, practically vibrating with excitement. First contact. Actual xenobiological specimens. Oh, this is fantastic. This is unprecedented. This is going to make my career. The creature took one look at Dr. Kronk's manic grin, and immediately tried to hide behind me. Smart little guy. Dr. Kronk, Rita said in her most professional voice. We need immediate analysis and classification. This organism was found in Corporal Morrison's equipment. Found. Kronk's eyes lit up even brighter. You mean it sought out human contact voluntarily? This could indicate advanced intelligence, possibly even intentional communication attempts. We need to document everything. Habitat preferences, dietary requirements, social behaviors. It likes protein bars, I offered. Fascinating. Human food acceptance could suggest compatible biochemistry, or perhaps adaptive digestive systems. Or maybe, Dr. Kronk. Rita interrupted. Classification first, theories later. But the little guy had apparently decided that Dr. Kronk was entirely too enthusiastic for his liking. His fur shifted to a deep warning red, and he made a sound that was decidedly less cute and more like a tiny air raid siren. Remarkable, Kronk whispered. Chromatic communication and auditory warning systems. The evolutionary implications are staggering. That's when I realized two things. First, my little stowaway was a lot more complex than I'd initially thought. And second, this situation was about to get way more complicated than anyone was prepared for. The creature looked up at me with those galaxy eyes, and I could swear it was trying to tell me something. Something important. Something like help me. So here's where things went from weird to completely insane. Command got word about our little discovery, and suddenly everyone wanted a piece of my backpack buddy. Within 6 hours, I had orders to transfer the creature to Research Station Alpha for comprehensive study and analysis, which is military speak for we're going to poke it with science until it does something interesting. The creature, who I'd started calling Sparkles because honestly, what else do you call a disco ball cat, seemed to understand exactly what was happening. His fur had been stuck on anxious purple for the last hour, and he kept making those soft mewing sounds that were starting to tear at what was left of my cold, dead heart. It's for the best, Morrison, Rita said. But even she didn't sound convinced. Command has resources we don't. Better facilities, proper containment protocols. Containment. I looked down at Sparkles, who was currently curled up in my lap like the world's most exotic house pet. Rita, look at him. Does this look like something that needs to be contained? Dr. Kronk was practically bouncing off the walls. The research opportunities are incredible, Jake. We could learn so much about xenobiology, interspecies communication, evolutionary adaptation patterns. What we could learn, I interrupted, is how to traumatize a scared animal that just wants somewhere safe to sleep. That's when Sparkles did something that changed everything. He looked right at me, and clear as day, in perfect English, he said, "Jake, help." The room went dead silent. Rita's mouth fell open. Dr. Kronk made a noise like a deflating balloon, and I felt something inside my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Something that felt suspiciously like purpose. Did that thing just Rita started? Talk? Yeah, it did. I looked down at Sparkles, who was staring up at me with those galaxy eyes. "You understand us, don't you, Jake?" "Good," Sparkles said, his tiny voice carrying more trust than I deserved. "Others scary. And that's when I made probably the worst decision of my military career." "Then we're getting you out of here." Rita stepped forward. "Morrison, you can't be serious. These are direct orders from command." "Rita, it's a kid. Look at him. He's scared. He's alone. And he trusts me. I'm not handing him over to be dissected." "Nobody said anything about dissection," Dr. Kronk protested. "Nobody said anything about not dissecting either. The transport was arriving in 30 minutes. Which gave me just enough time to implement the worst rescue plan in military history. Step 1. Steal a hoverbike. Step 2. Hope Sparkles could hold on. Step 3. Figure out the rest as we went along." Sparkles seemed to understand the plan because as soon as I stood up he scrambled onto my shoulder and his fur shifted to match my uniform. Active camouflage. Of course he had active camouflage, because apparently my life wasn't complicated enough. "Jake," Rita said in her warning voice. "Don't do this. You'll be court-martialed." "Probably. But I'll sleep better at night." Getting to the motor pool was easy. Sparkles stayed perfectly camouflaged, and his weight was so light I barely noticed him. The hard part was going to be getting past the perimeter without triggering every alarm on the base. I fired up the hoverbike, and Sparkles made a delighted chittering sound. Apparently he liked the vibration. His fur shifted from camouflage to excited gold, which was not helpful when we were trying to be stealthy. "Sparkles, buddy, you need to stay hidden," I whispered. "Sparkles," he repeated, tilting his head. Then his fur shifted through a rapid sequence of colors that somehow looked pleased. "Sparkles, good name." "Yeah, well, don't get attached. We're probably both going to be in a lot of trouble soon." We made it exactly 300 meters before everything went sideways. Turns out, the base's automated security system doesn't care if you're having an emotional breakthrough with an alien life form. It just knows that someone is leaving the perimeter without authorization, and it really doesn't like that. Alarms started blaring. Lights started flashing. And suddenly half the base was mobilizing to chase down one rogue corporal and his interdimensional cat friend. "This is command to Corporal Morrison," came the voice over my comm. "Return to base immediately." "Sorry, Command," I replied, gunning the hoverbike toward the wildlife preserve that bordered our compound. "I'm experiencing technical difficulties." "Morrison," that was Rita's voice. "You're heading straight for the preserve. That area is off limits for a reason." She was right. The Zarian 7 Wildlife Preserve was home to some of the most aggressively territorial species in this sector. But it was also the only place on this rock where Command couldn't just send drones to drag us back. Sparkles was holding on tight, his little claws gripping my uniform. His fur had shifted to rapid cycling colors that I was pretty sure meant either excitement or terror. Possibly both. "Jake," he said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "We're going. Somewhere safe, buddy. Somewhere they can't find us while we figure this out." Behind us I could see pursuit vehicles closing in. Ahead of us was a wall of alien forest that looked about as welcoming as a tax audit. And clinging to my shoulder was a small creature who trusted me to keep him safe, even though I was pretty sure I was about to get us both killed. Just another day in the military, I guess. The Zarian 7 Wildlife Preserve turned out to be less peaceful nature sanctuary and more everything here wants to kill you in creative ways. We'd been hiding in a cave system for about 6 hours when Dr. Kronk found us. Apparently, he'd been tracking us using some kind of bioscanner. Because of course he had. "Jake," he called out, scrambling over the rocks with all the grace of a caffeinated penguin. "Thank goodness you're safe. Command has half the base out looking for you." "Great," I muttered. "Come to drag us back to the lab?" "Actually no." Kronk looked around nervously. "I came to warn you, and to tell you something important about your friend there." Sparkles had been quiet for most of our escape, but now his fur was cycling through colors I'd never seen before. Deep blues mixed with silver, creating patterns that almost looked like writing. He was staring at Dr. Kronk with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Kronk knows," Sparkles said quietly. "Kronk knows what Sparkles is." Dr. Kronk's eyes went wide. "You've been communicating with him this whole time?" "Yeah. Turns out he's a fast learner." Also turns out he's got opinions about being locked up in laboratories. Jake, you don't understand, Kronk said, settling down on a rock. I've been analyzing the tissue samples from your backpack, running genetic comparisons, cross-referencing with the xenobiological database. Your friend here isn't just any alien species. Sparkles moved closer to me, and I could feel him trembling slightly. His fur had shifted to that anxious purple again. He's Luminari, Kronk continued. An ancient species that was thought to be completely extinct. They were wiped out by the Hegemony Alliance about 2 centuries ago. The Hegemony? I'd heard that name before. Bad news. The kind of bad news that conquered star systems for fun. Why would they wipe out an entire species? Because the Luminari have a unique evolutionary trait. They're empathic. Not just emotionally sensitive, but actually empathic. They can feel and influence the emotions of other sentient beings around them. I looked down at Sparkles, who was now a soft, sad blue. Is that why I've been feeling so protective of him? Partially, yes. But Jake, here's the thing about Luminari empathy. It's not mind control. It doesn't make you feel things that aren't already there. It just amplifies what's already inside you. Meaning? Meaning that protectiveness you're feeling, that's genuinely yours. He's just making it easier for you to access it. Sparkles made a soft sound and pressed closer to me. Jake, good heart, he said quietly. Jake sad inside, but good heart. And that hit me right in the chest, because he was right. I had been sad inside, sad and angry and tired of a universe that seemed designed to disappoint everyone in it. But being around Sparkles, I'd felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope, maybe. Or just the simple pleasure of being needed by someone who wasn't going to judge me for my mistakes. There's more, Dr. Kronk said. The Luminari bond with other species during times of extreme stress. It's a survival mechanism. Once bonded, they share emotional states, can communicate telepathically over short distances, and experience genuine affection for their bonded partner. Bonded? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean bonded? Jake, Sparkles said, looking up at me with those galaxy eyes. Jake feels what Sparkles feels now. Sparkles feels what Jake feels. Dr. Kronk nodded. It's already happened. The moment he chose to trust you, the moment you chose to protect him, the bond was formed. That's why you've been able to understand each other so quickly. I sat there for a moment, processing this. My emotions were connected to an alien creature who was supposedly extinct and definitely being hunted by one of the most dangerous military forces in the galaxy. Just perfect. So what happens now? I asked. Now? Dr. Kronk looked nervous again. Now we have a problem. Because the Hegemony didn't just wipe out the Luminari for their empathic abilities. They wiped them out because those abilities made them incredibly dangerous to military operations. Dangerous how? A fully mature Luminari can project empathy across vast distances. They can make entire armies feel compassion for their enemies. They can turn hate into understanding, aggression into cooperation. During the Hegemony's expansion, they encountered a Luminari colony world, and their entire invasion force ended up laying down their weapons and trying to negotiate peace instead. Sparkles had gone very still. Sparkles not want to hurt anyone, he said quietly. You wouldn't be hurting anyone, buddy, I told him. But I guess some people see peace as a threat. The Hegemony does, Dr. Kronk confirmed. And Jake, here's the worst part. Command received a transmission 3 hours ago. A Hegemony battle cruiser just entered the system. They're demanding we turn over any Luminari specimens immediately. They know he's here. They know something's here. Luminari emit a unique energy signature when they're bonded. It's faint, but detectable with the right equipment. I looked down at Sparkles, who was now shifting through colors that looked like a sunset. Beautiful and sad at the same time. So they're coming for him. They're coming for both of you. Dr. Kronk said grimly. The bond works both ways, Jake. You're as much a part of this now as he is. Sparkles climbed up onto my lap and settled there, purring softly. Jake, not leave Sparkles? He asked. And looking down at this small scared creature who had somehow become the most important thing in my life in the span of a day, I realized I'd already made my choice. Had probably made it the moment I found him in my backpack. No, buddy, I said, scratching behind what I thought were his ears. Jake's not going anywhere. Dr. Kronk shook his head. You know what this means, don't you? The Hegemony won't just take him. They'll study the bond, try to weaponize it, use it to create more effective ways to control populations. Then we don't let them have him. Jake, this is the Hegemony we're talking about. They have resources, weapons, entire fleets, and we have something they don't. I looked down at Sparkles, whose fur was now shifting to determined gold. We have each other, and apparently we have the power to make people feel what we feel. You're talking about fighting back. I'm talking about showing them what they're really trying to destroy. I stood up, Sparkles clinging to my shoulder. If his species can make people feel empathy, then maybe it's time this galaxy remembered what that feels like. Dr. Kronk stared at me. You're either very brave or completely insane. Probably both, but I'm done running. Sparkles nuzzled against my neck. Jake, brave, he said. Sparkles brave too, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt something that wasn't fear or anger or resignation. I felt ready. The hegemony battlecruiser dropped out of hyperspace like a metallic thundercloud, all sharp angles and weapon ports that probably had names like Planet Cracker and Civilization Ender. From our position back at the base, it looked like someone had parked a city-sized middle finger directly above us. Well, I said, watching it blot out a good chunk of the sky, that's not ominous at all. Command had recalled all personnel immediately after the ship's arrival, which meant our little hiding expedition was officially over. Dr. Kronk had convinced me to come back by pointing out that running wouldn't help anyone if the hegemony decided to glass the entire planet looking for us. Sometimes I really hate it when smart people make sense. Sparkles was pressed against my neck, his fur cycling through nervous patterns of blue and silver. I could feel his anxiety mixing with my own, creating this feedback loop of worry that was making it hard to think straight. The bonding thing was going to take some getting used to. Jake scared, Sparkles whispered. Sparkles feel it. Yeah buddy, I'm scared, but we're going to figure this out. Promise? I looked down at him, those galaxy eyes staring up at me with complete trust. Promise. The hegemony delegation arrived exactly 1 hour later, and let me tell you, these guys did not mess around when it came to making an impression. 3 of them, each about 7 feet tall, covered in what looked like living armor that shifted and moved like liquid metal. Their faces were hidden behind masks that probably cost more than my entire military salary. The leader stepped forward and spoke in a voice that sounded like it had been processed through a computer designed by someone who'd never heard human emotion before. I am War Commander Thex of the Hegemony Strategic Operations Division. We have detected unauthorized luminary biosignatures on this world. Colonel Harris, our base commander, stepped forward. Poor guy looked like he'd aged about 10 years in the last few hours. War Commander, we're prepared to cooperate fully with your investigation, but I should inform you that any extraterrestrial life forms discovered on this world fall under Terra Alliance jurisdiction. The Terra Alliance has no jurisdiction over luminary specimens. The X interrupted. By Galactic Concord at 247, all luminary genetic material and associated entities are property of the Hegemony Military Research Division. Associated entities. Dr. Kronk spoke up from beside me. What exactly does that mean? The X turned toward us, and I felt Sparkles go completely still. Any being that has formed an empathic bond with luminary subjects becomes a security risk. Such beings are to be detained for study and eventual termination. Termination. I stepped forward, and I felt something interesting happen. The fear I'd been carrying started transforming into something else. Something hotter. You want to kill people for being friends with the wrong species. You misunderstand the nature of the threat human. Bonded subjects carry luminary emotional influence. They become vectors for empathic contamination. Contamination. The anger was building now, and I could feel it flowing through the bond to Sparkles, who was starting to glow softly against my neck. You mean compassion? Understanding? The ability to actually give a damn about other people. Rita grabbed my arm. Morrison, stand down, but I was done standing down. No Rita, you know what, I want to hear this. I want to hear them explain why empathy is so dangerous that they committed genocide to stop it. War Commander Thex tilted his head. The Luminari were eliminated because they threatened galactic stability. Their influence made military action impossible, trade negotiations inefficient, territorial expansion economically unfeasible. They were a threat to order. They were a threat to your order. I shot back. Because they made it harder for you to convince people that war was the answer to everything. And that's when Sparkles did something that changed the entire dynamic of the conversation. His fur suddenly blazed with brilliant gold light, and I felt a wave of emotion wash out from us like ripples in a pond. Not my emotions, not his emotions, but somehow the truth of what we were feeling together. The effect was immediate and visible. Colonel Harris straightened up, his expression shifting from diplomatic caution to protective determination. Rita's hand moved to her sidearm, her jaw setting in a way I'd never seen before. Dr. Kronk stepped closer to us, his usual nervous energy replaced by something that looked almost fierce. Even some of the other soldiers in the compound were affected. I could see them looking at the hegemony delegation with expressions that were less intimidated and more appraising, like they were seeing clearly for the first time. But the most interesting reaction came from the hegemony soldiers themselves. The two flanking war commander theks shifted uncomfortably, their liquid armor rippling with what looked like uncertainty. One of them actually took a half step backward. Fascinating, the X said, but his processed voice carried something that sounded almost like alarm. The specimen is more developed than our sensors indicated, and the bond is stronger than anticipated. The specimen has a name, I said, and the bond isn't something you can just analyze and file away. It's real. Sparkles raised his head, looking directly at the war commander. When he spoke, his small voice carried across the entire compound with perfect clarity. Why hegemony afraid of love? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The X stared at Sparkles for a long moment, and I swear I could see some kind of internal struggle happening behind that mask. Love, he finally said, is inefficient. It creates unpredictable variables in strategic calculations. It makes beings act against their own rational interests. Jake act for Sparkles, Sparkles replied, is not against interest, is better interest. And I felt it then, flowing through the bond between us and somehow extending outward to everyone in the compound. The absolute certainty that caring about someone else, protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves, wasn't weakness or inefficiency or contamination. It was the thing that made us more than just complicated biological machines following programming. Dr. Kronk cleared his throat. War Commander, perhaps we could discuss research protocols. There will be no research. The X said, the luminary specimen will be terminated immediately. The bonded human will be detained for study, then terminated when no longer useful. Like hell, Rita said, and her voice carried a tone of authority that made everyone in the compound stand a little straighter. This is a Terra Alliance installation, and we don't execute sentient beings on the orders of foreign powers. You will comply, or this installation will be classified as harboring enemy combatants. Colonel Harris stepped forward. Are you threatening to attack a diplomatic research station, War Commander? I am informing you of the consequences of non-compliance. That's when I realized something important. The hegemony wasn't here because they were strong, they were here because they were terrified. Sparkles and I, this tiny bond between a scared soldier and a lost alien kid, represented something that could unravel everything they'd built their empire on. You know what I think, I said, feeling Sparkles' warmth against my neck and the support of everyone around us. I think you're scared that if people start feeling what we feel, they're going to stop believing your version of how the galaxy should work. Sparkles' glow intensified, and I felt the wave of empathy expand outward again. This time, it reached beyond the compound, touching the minds of every human on the base, maybe even beyond. War Commander Thex raised his weapon. Enough. Surrender the specimen, or face the consequences. But as he spoke, I noticed something interesting. His two flanking soldiers hadn't raised their weapons. They were staring at Sparkles with expressions I couldn't read through their masks, but their body language looked less like threat and more like confusion. Jake, Sparkles whispered. Sparkles feels something, from them. Under the angry something else, I looked at the hegemony soldiers more carefully. What do you feel, buddy? Sadness, he said quietly. Very old sadness, and lonely. And that's when I understood. The hegemony hadn't just eliminated the luminary to maintain order. They'd eliminated them because they were afraid of feeling anything themselves. Afraid of the vulnerability that came with actual connection. War Commander, I said, my voice carrying across the compound with new confidence. When was the last time anyone in the hegemony felt genuinely happy? The X's weapon wavered slightly. Behind his mask, I could swear I heard something that sounded almost like pain. The standoff stretched on, tension building like electricity in the air. And through it all, Sparkles continued to glow, continued to project that simple truth outward, that caring about each other wasn't weakness. It was the only strength that actually mattered. The standoff lasted exactly 17 seconds. I know because I was counting, the way you do when you're pretty sure you're about to die and want to know how much time you have left to figure out a miracle. That's when one of the hegemony flanking soldiers did something that surprised everyone. He lowered his weapon. War Commander, he said, and his voice came through the helmet's speakers with a slight tremor. The readings are unusual. Explain. The X snapped, but he kept his weapon trained on us. The empathic field is affecting our neural dampeners. I'm experiencing irregularities in my emotional processing matrix. Sparkles looked up at me with those galaxy eyes. Jake, the sad one is fighting the machines in his head. I felt a chill run down my spine. Machines? Dr. Kronk stepped forward carefully. War Commander, are your soldiers using artificial emotion regulation? The X's helmet turned toward Kronk with mechanical precision. Hegemony military personnel undergo standard psychological conditioning to ensure operational efficiency. You mean you lobotomize them? I said, feeling a surge of disgust flow through the bond. You cut out their ability to feel so they'll follow orders without question. We remove inefficiencies. The soldier who had spoken earlier was now visibly shaking. His armor was rippling in ways that looked almost like distress. War Commander, the conditioning protocols are failing. I'm experiencing, I don't know what to call it. It's called being human, Rita said quietly. Or whatever passes for human in your species. Sparkle's glow intensified again, and I felt the empathic wave pulse outward stronger than before. This time it seemed to focus specifically on the 3 hegemony soldiers. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The second flanking soldier dropped his weapon entirely and fell to his knees. What is this? He gasped. What's happening to me? You're feeling, Dr. Kronk said with wonder in his voice. Maybe for the first time in years, War Commander. The X raised his weapon higher, but I could see his hand was shaking. Cease this immediately. Disengage the empathic field or face immediate termination. I can't just turn it off, I said. It's not a weapon, it's who we are now. Jake. Sparkles whispered, the angry one hurts. Very much hurt. Very long time. I looked at Thex more carefully, trying to see past the armor and the mask and the processed voice. What I saw was a being who had been so thoroughly stripped of emotional connection that he was barely functioning as anything more than a biological computer. War Commander, I said, what's your real name? The question seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He staggered slightly, his weapon wavering. Designation War Commander Thex. Strategic Operations Division. Hegemony Military. Not your designation. Your name. What did people call you before they turned you into this? Behind the mask I heard something that sounded like a sob. The processed voice cracked as he spoke. I don't, Kelix. My name was Kelix. Kelix. Sparkles said softly, why do you hurt yourself? I don't hurt myself. I serve the hegemony. I maintain order. I eliminate threats to galactic stability. But even as he said it, the words sounded hollow, like he was reading from a script he no longer believed. The hegemony made you forget how to feel, I said. Just like they did to your soldiers. Just like they tried to do to everyone by wiping out the Luminari. Kelix's weapon was shaking violently now. Feelings are weakness. Attachments are inefficiency. Love is what makes life worth living. I finished. Without it you're just going through the motions until you die. The empathic field was reaching a crescendo now, and I could feel it affecting everyone on the base. Soldiers were reaching out to comfort each other. Scientists were sharing looks of wonder and understanding. Even Colonel Harris had tears in his eyes as he looked at his people with what appeared to be genuine affection. But the strongest effect was on the 3 hegemony soldiers. They were experiencing decades of suppressed emotions all at once, and it was overwhelming them completely. Kelix fell to his knees, his weapon clattering to the ground. Make it stop, he begged. I can't handle this. The guilt, the loneliness, the things I've done. You can handle it, I said, kneeling down beside him. You just need to remember that you don't have to handle it alone. Sparkles climbed down from my shoulder and approached Kelix cautiously. The War Commander's armor was rippling wildly, and I realized it was responding to his emotional state like some kind of biometric feedback system. Kelix, Sparkles said in his small clear voice. Sparkles, forgive. Jake, forgive. You forgive you too, okay? And that's when Kelix broke completely. He pulled off his helmet with shaking hands, revealing a face that was startlingly human-like, streaked with tears and twisted with anguish. I've killed so many, he whispered. So many worlds, so many innocent people. How can you forgive that? Because, I said, feeling the truth of it flow through the bond, forgiveness isn't about what you've done, it's about what you choose to do next. The other 2 hegemony soldiers had also removed their helmets, revealing faces that were younger than I'd expected. They looked lost, confused, like children waking up from a nightmare. What do we do now? One of them asked. The hegemony will consider us defective. They'll send others. Dr. Kronk stepped forward. You could stay here. Apply for asylum with the Terra Alliance. Help us understand how to counter the hegemony's conditioning protocols. Help other people remember how to feel, Rita added. Kelix looked up at Sparkles, who was now sitting patiently beside him, glowing with soft, comforting light. Is this what your people were like? Before we destroyed them? Some, Sparkles said. But Sparkles not angry. Sparkles understand fear. Fear makes people do bad things sometimes. You're just a child, Kelix said, his voice breaking. You're just a child, and we hunted you like animals. Not anymore, I said firmly. This ends here. But even as I said it, I realized we had a problem. A big problem. Sparkle's empathic abilities were growing stronger by the hour, and he was just a juvenile. As he matured, his influence would expand, potentially affecting entire star systems. The hegemony would never stop hunting him. They'd send more ships, more soldiers, more weapons, and eventually, they'd either capture him or destroy everything around him trying. Jake, Sparkles said quietly, looking up at me with those galaxy eyes. Sparkles, know what you thinking. Feel it through bond. Yeah, buddy, I'm thinking we're in trouble. No, he said, his fur shifting to determined gold. Sparkles thinking too. Sparkles have idea. He stood up and addressed everyone in the compound, his small voice somehow carrying to every corner of the base. Sparkles not stay. Too dangerous for everyone. But Sparkles not go alone. My heart clenched. What are you talking about? Sparkles people, they out there, hiding, scattered, afraid. But if Sparkles call, they come. If Sparkles show them safe to feel again, they remember how to be luminary. Dr. Kronk's eyes went wide. You're talking about rebuilding your entire species. Not rebuild. Reunite. Show them it okay to care again. Show them there are people like Jake who protect instead of hurt. I felt tears running down my face as I understood what he was saying. You want to leave, to find your people and help them. Want to stay with Jake, Sparkles said, climbing back up to my shoulder, but need to help others feel safe, like Jake helped Sparkles feel safe. Kellic stood up slowly, his face still streaked with tears but his expression resolute. I'll help you. My ship, my crew, will renounce our allegiance to the hegemony. We'll help you find your people and protect them. Why? I asked. Because for the first time in 20 years I feel like I have a purpose beyond just following orders. I feel like I'm choosing to do something good. The other two hegemony soldiers nodded agreement. Rita stepped forward. The Terra Alliance will provide official sanctuary and protection. Colonel Harris cleared his throat. I'll need to contact command, but I think we can arrange safe passage and ongoing support. Sparkles nuzzled against my neck. Jake come too, and there it was. The choice I'd been dreading. I could go with him, help him rebuild his species, spend my life protecting and caring for the most important friend I'd ever had. Or I could stay here, go back to my routine, my patrols, my comfortable misery. Sparkles, I said, my voice rough with emotion. You don't need me to protect you anymore. You've got Kellic and his crew, you've got the Alliance's support. You're going to be fine. But Jake needs Sparkles, he said quietly. Jake still sat inside, still lonely. Yeah, buddy. But you know what? I'm not as sad as I used to be, and I'm not as lonely either, because you taught me something important. What Jake learn? I looked around at all the faces watching us. Rita, who had gone from following orders to following her heart. Dr. Kronk, who had discovered that the greatest scientific discovery was learning to care about your subjects. Colonel Harris, who was looking at his people with genuine love for the first time. Even Kellic and his soldiers, who had remembered what it felt like to be more than just biological machines. You taught me that caring about people isn't a weakness. It's what makes us stronger. And now I know how to do that without you. Sparkles was quiet for a long moment, his fur cycling through colors that looked like a sunset. Finally he spoke. Jake will be okay. Jake will be okay. And Sparkles will be okay too. And maybe if we're really lucky, we'll see each other again someday. Promise. I scratched behind his ears one last time. Promise. The goodbye was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Watching Sparkles board Kellic's ship, seeing him look back at me through the viewport with those galaxy eyes, feeling the bond between us stretch, and finally, gently, release as the ship lifted off and disappeared into the stars. But as I stood there watching him go, I wasn't alone. Rita was beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Dr. Kronk was already talking excitedly about establishing communication protocols with the reformed Luminary colony. Colonel Harris was making plans to turn our base into a sanctuary for other species fleeing persecution. And for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. I felt hope. 6 months later, I got a message. It was brief, transmitted through channels I didn't even know existed, but I recognized the sender immediately. Jake found others. They remember how to feel now. They remember how to love. Thank you for showing Sparkles what it means to be brave. Miss you. Love you. See you again someday. Promise. I kept that message. Read it whenever I felt that old loneliness creeping back in. Because Sparkles was right. We would see each other again. And until then I had work to do. People to protect. Hearts to help heal. After all I'd learned from the best.